We have plenty to discuss here in today's video, including some more talk around the future of Kirill Kaprizov. One New York Rangers beat reporter feels the Rangers would be on his list of preferred destinations and recently discussed what he thought a trade would look like. We'll discuss that and see if it makes sense and how they should proceed in that sense. Plus, the future of Quinn Hughes in Vancouver was discussed by Elliotte Friedman on his latest podcast. We'll discuss where things sit according to Elliotte in that sense, plus some other updates around the NHL, including Corey Perry, injured already during his new stint in LA. Big update on potential options for Carter Hart. We also have a big signing in Chicago and a few other tidbits around the NHL. All that coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have plenty of NHL news and rumors to take a look at here today. First, before we jump into a lot of the other news, I just want to acknowledge that we saw some sad news again in the hockey world here today. Longtime NHL PA Executive Director Bob Goodenow has suddenly passed away today at the fairly young age of 72. Of course, Bob Goodenow was a lawyer by trade, was the Executive Director of the PA. For a long time, fought hard for a lot of player rights and was involved in a lot of heated negotiations with Gary Bettman. He was involved with the NHLPA between 92 and 2005, so a long stretch there, and obviously did a lot of good for the game. And even though like him and Gary Bettman were pretty long-time rivals, I know Bettman and the NHL put out a nice statement kind of acknowledging his passing and a lot of nice things to say about him. So certainly want to pass along our condolences to the friends and family of Bob Goodenow, former director of the NHL PA. As I mentioned, one of the bigger news items we got today was a big extension with the Chicago Blackhawks. Of course, last year we saw them sign for young goaltender Spencer Knight, who they certainly have signed and paid and hope will fulfill the duty of being the future starting goaltender for the Blackhawks for an extended period of time here. They've extended him on a 3-year contract at $5.83 million per season. So that gives them another young core member of that team locked up on a decently lengthy contract here. Of course, they've recently signed some of their D-men as well as Nazar. Bedard will be coming up soon, and certainly want to continue working at that. But Knight, they like I said, they really see him as being the goalie of the future. It's gonna be real interesting to see how a full year in Chicago, going through camp and everything, will do for Spencer Knight in Chicago. Of course, he was drafted very, very highly, had an extremely good run in college, had a decent amount of success in Florida as well with the Panthers before the trade. Obviously, had some things he was dealing with off the ice, which kind of kept him away from the Panthers the last, on and off the last year plus or so he was there, but certainly seems to have everything under control and doing well here with Chicago. Now, as I mentioned, things are off to a not so good start for Corey Perry during his new tenure with the Los Angeles Kings. I mean, we haven't even made it to training camp yet, and unfortunately the veteran is already injured, and fairly seriously at that. As we talked about in yesterday's video, Perry ended up leaving the ice in one of the pre-training camp captain skates on a wheelchair. So obviously we knew that the injury had to be fairly serious. If he was having trouble with one of his legs, couldn't put weight on it or what have you. Today the Kings did acknowledge that Corey Perry suffered a knee injury, required surgery, and is going to be out for about 8 weeks or up to 8 weeks. So that's going to mean that Corey Perry and his new team in LA, unfortunately, will miss training camp and likely the first, probably month or month and a bit of the 25-26 season. So that's certainly not what Perry was hoping for to start off with a new team. So hopefully Corey Perry makes a speedy recovery and can get back to action here relatively soon, but likely going to be, I'd say, probably November before we see him, and maybe towards the end of October if everything goes well, but we'll see where things go. Staying with LA for a moment, of course, we've heard before in the offseason that Adrian Kempe and the Los Angeles Kings have mutual interest in getting a contract extension done. He is going into the final year of his deal, and there had been some talks already. I know we had reports previously from the fourthperiod.com's Dave Pagnotta that there was a sizable gap, and it seems like that gap may have increased, actually. Kempe's original asking price was believed to be on an 8-year deal around $10 million per season. He's now reporting that believes that the asking price has kind of gone up and it might be closer to like $11 million, whereas the team's original offer was below $9 million. So I don't want to say there's no hope because we're not at that stage yet, but it's a big, sizable gap that they're going to have to be able to bridge to overcome this to get an extension completed. Kempe was talking to media, to NHL media availability here in the last few days, and he did acknowledge that he really would like to see a contract extension get done. He loves LA, wants to stay, and is hoping it gets done as soon as possible. So we will see, but right now there remains a large gap in order for them to proceed with getting something done. Including Chris Johnson, Frank Zaravalli, and a few others. Carter Hart, of course, is currently an unrestricted free agent and allowed to return to the NHL as of December the 1st. Apparently has several options that he will be able to consider for his future. Obviously, all the 5 players involved from the 2018 World Junior team who were just acquitted of charges through trial will be eligible to sign a contract here, not until the middle of October, but they can play as of December the 1st. It's believed that by the time we hit even October the 1st, Carter Hart will have likely a decision made and will know what team he's going to. Won't be official until a few weeks later, but it's believed to be a few teams in the mix. The latest reports do indicate that he wants to have a completely new, fresh start, so it's very, very unlikely that he returns to his old team of the Philadelphia Flyers. It's also expected that he's going to be having teams offer him likely 2 to 3 year contracts. Believed to be a couple of teams that is expected to make offers might include Pittsburgh and Carolina, and at least one U.S.-based Western Conference team. I know we had heard about the Edmonton Oilers, and as of right now, it doesn't sound like they're one of the teams that are going to be expected to be in the mix, but a lot can change. So we will see where things go. Obviously, like I said, if Hart's able to get 2 or 3 year term, then that might be a little bit, risky for Edmonton for their sake. So we'll see where that goes, but we'll have more on that as we get closer to the time that these players are eligible to sign anything. No, Luke Evangelista in Nashville, and the latest intel on that situation, that there's no real progress on a contract extension here as of yet. He remains an unsigned restricted free agent, so no contract means no ability to play. It's believed that the most likely outcome is that he's going to have to end up accepting a bridge deal, but Evangelista and the Predators definitely have a gap in money right now, and there is believed to be some frustration on the player side that this is not done yet. So we will see. It is possible that it works out and he signs an extension, but it is also possible that it ends in trade. I know NHL reporters seem to be kind of torn, but many of them saying that he could be the most likely, if there is an unsigned RFA that ends up getting traded, that it might be a more likely scenario with Evangelista, but we'll see. NHL veteran defenseman Calvin DeHaan is leaving the NHL. We know he was looking for work, but was unable to find anything that was acceptable for him. So DeHaan has signed to play this season in Sweden in the SHL. So he's officially heading to Europe. Nicholas Hague, of course, we know the former Golden Knights defenseman, now a member of the Nashville Predators, recently conducted an interview with the Vegas Review-Journal and made some interesting comments, which really, to be honest, I don't think really should surprise any of us. But Hague had to say that after the regular season was over, but before the playoffs started, that Hague and the Golden Knights had a verbal agreement on a contract extension, all done up. It was kind of like a handshake agreement, if you will. Nothing was signed. Nothing was on paper. They didn't want to be a distraction to the team or anything. They still had to go into the playoffs and, try to take care of business, right? So they kind of shook hands on it and agreed that they would, the terms were agreed to, and they would make it official after their playoff season was over. But when the playoff season was over, the Golden Knights ended up reneging on that offer and traded him instead. Now, he said he's kind of, knows how they do business and doesn't really hold a grudge, but certainly kind of another player in Vegas that was caught off guard by a trade, thinking he had a contract already ironed out and worked on. But clearly, like we said before, it's pretty clear that the Golden Knights are pretty ruthless and at the end of the day, they will make the decisions that they feel are in the best interest of the team, which you do expect them to do. And long tenure players or drafted players have been there long and developed. Doesn't seem to matter. If they feel like they need to move you, they're going to move you no matter what. They don't seem to have any emotional attachment, which is probably not a bad thing. But certainly, like I said, we've seen them make some pretty ruthless moves and some players leave with, bad blood. Hague says he doesn't have any, but we'll see over time. But yeah, at the end of the day, just not really surprised hearing that come from the Golden Knights. Now, of course, like I said, a couple of players that we're really monitoring their futures on. One is Quinn Hughes, which we'll talk about quickly. Then we'll get into the Kirill Kaprizov information that came across here today. Of course, Quinn Hughes is one of the players talked about by Elliotte Friedman on his latest 32 Thoughts podcast that just came out here in the last 24 hours or so. And it sure seems like, based on the opinion of Elliotte, that this year in Vancouver is crucial to the long-term future, if there is one, for Quinn Hughes being a Canuck. Now, we've heard Quinn Hughes' comments. We've looked at those in the last few days here. Of course, he was at the media tour as well. Commented on the fact that, yes, he indeed would like to play with his brother someday. We heard Jack Hughes echo that same sentiment. Of course, Quinn Hughes did acknowledge that he feels like he's got some unfinished business in Vancouver, but acknowledged that, this last year wasn't very good, and he really wants to see the team bounce back this year, and kind of alluded to the fact, which Elliotte kind of really focuses on here in his podcast, saying that this year and the performance of the team is likely going to play a huge role, if not be one of the biggest deciding factors in the future of Quinn Hughes and whether or not he extends in Vancouver or decides to try to team up with his brothers elsewhere in New Jersey or wherever. Clearly, if the Canucks have another down season, it sure sounds like that might be a major reason for Quinn to consider not bothering signing an extension. So obviously this year's results in Vancouver, they're always important. You always want to see the team do well if you're a fan of the team. But if you don't want to lose your franchise player and your captain, this year needs to go well and need to see some progress, probably get back into the playoffs and have Quinn feel a whole lot better about where things are at with the state of the franchise. So not a given he leaves, of course, but just with the comments from the player, comments from Elliotte, it sure sounds like a lot is riding on the team's performance for the coming season. Now, as I mentioned, lots of talk and speculation over the last couple of days here over Kirill Kaprizov, dollar bill Kirill as they call him, after he signed his last contract with the Wild. That was a lucrative one, and we know now that the Minnesota Wild here in recent days have offered Kirill the most lucrative contract in NHL history, and he said, no, thank you. So that's concerning, obviously, and we've talked about the fact that it could mean that Kirill maybe wants something different. It could also mean that he just doesn't want to be in Minnesota. Unfortunately, there's lots of opinions out there. One of the ones we're going to look at here today is around Vince Mercogliano. Now, of course, he is a beat writer for the New York Rangers. Now, he wonders if Kaprizov could end up in the Big Apple. Basically, he did a more of a Q&A style article here, and he was basically saying that based on his knowledge of the situation, that he believes strongly that the Rangers would be a preferred destination if Kirill leaves the Minnesota Wild. Now, no reporter out there right now has said 100% that they think Kirill's going to leave Minnesota, but there's certainly many of them that have a lot of concerns and reservations that he will, based on the fact of what he's rejected for a contract offer. Now, the other big thing as well, we'll get into Mercogliano's comments here in a second, but some people do think that he wants to wait and see what McDavid signs for, because McDavid's going to be the biggest contract. We know that. Nobody's going to get paid more than him for the short term at least, and it could push everybody a little bit higher. So until that deal is done, they're I don't know that it's really a fair comparison, to be honest, but Connor is a center, Kaprizov is a winger, McDavid has won numerous things, including several scoring titles, league MVP, been to the conference finals numerous times, been to the Stanley Cup final a couple of times. He was Conn Smythe Trophy winner. He's done everything really but win the Stanley Cup, whereas Kirill has a lot less of a resume, So is he a really good, exciting, dynamic player? Yes. Can he be a top 5 to 10 player in the league? Yeah, maybe. I think he can. but especially considering how much time he missed last year, I think the offer made that he rejected was pretty reasonable. But like I said, it's not all about money for some of these players. But according to Mirko Gliano, he says that a couple of things that we've reiterated here before when it comes to the Rangers. I mean, when the Rangers were the first team that came to mind when Michael Russo did his emergency podcast learning of this information that Kaprizov rejected the contract. He mentioned the Rangers, he mentioned Chicago, but according to based on the Rangers here, based on the Rangers beat side of it, that he's good friends with Artemi Panarin, so that could play a role. He's also good friends with Igor Shesterkin and Gavrikov, who just signed with the Rangers as well. So there's lots of teammates there that he's quite good friends with, and certainly would have an ability that he'd like to play with them for sure, I would imagine. And what a trade might look like, according to Vince, he thinks if they were to make a trade and not try to just wait and get him in free agency, that it could be a situation where maybe it costs them a couple of first-round picks and a player like Alexis Lafreniere. Now, they have 2 first-round picks next year. What if they're willing to move both and Lafreniere? Moving Lafreniere's contract, he argues, would allow them to not only pay Kaprizov, but would allow them to extend and keep Panarin. He's entering the final year of his contract as well. I mean, Shesterkin signed long-term. Gavrikov signed a decent long-term contract this summer, so they'd all be there for an extended time. We know that Chris Drury and the Rangers are not afraid to shake things up. Really, I don't think that there's anybody that's would be too surprised if they did trade Lafreniere. Some people think that Lafreniere's contract might be difficult to trade given his struggles this past season since he signed that deal. But if you're Minnesota and you're worried about losing Kaprizov for nothing and you can get Lafreniere and a couple of first-round picks, if you're convinced that Kaprizov's not staying and you're going to lose him no matter what, don't you think that's a pretty good offer? I mean, I got to say, I think that's pretty good. Now, of course, it's not often you see a player of that magnitude traded, so it's really difficult to say if really just how fair it is. But it's an interesting concept for sure. They would have to move money out, and I have to think that might be one of the preferred contracts they would move, especially if they can get another high-end winger like Kaprizov. And if they bring in Kaprizov and let's say Lafreniere wasn't part of the deal, it's just going to push him further down the lineup and going to cause him to be probably less offensive because he's going to play a different role. It might not be best for him to stick around anyway. So really, Kaprizov to the Rangers for a couple of first-round picks and Alexis Lafreniere, I mean, I don't know if that gets it done or not. I have no clue how Bill Guerin would feel about that. But really, you got to think at the very least, I think that's a really good starting point. I mean, at the end of the day, there's not going to be a lot of leverage for some of these teams, if they're going to lose their star players. Like if Edmonton was in that predicament with McDavid, if Pittsburgh ever decides to move Crosby, they're going to be the ones calling the shots. So unfortunately, I think it limits the return. In this case of Kirill, if he's the one that makes that decision to not return, they may not get as much as you might think on a trade, given the fact that he's made it clear he's not signing and he'll only go to certain teams because he has a full no move clause. So yeah, if you don't trade him and get something back, you could lose him for absolutely nothing. So getting a couple of first rounders in Lafreniere would be a heck of a lot better than nothing. So let me know what you think on that scenario. Do you see the Rangers as a prime landing spot if Kirill leaves Minnesota? I think it makes a ton of sense. Like I said, really, the reporters that know him best and that cover the Wild, like with Russo especially, the first 2 teams that came out of his mouth were the Rangers and Chicago. So I think that, if this does lead down that road, and it looks like it might, it could very well be a landing spot that makes too much sense. And I do think that this trade proposal that he made actually does make a lot of sense as well. So let me know what you think down in the comments. We'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, of course, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you next time.